So an Irish lesbian walks into a shrink's office, and she begins. I need some help. I've always been a go-getter. People look to me for support, but I've just gone overboard. I was hired as the head of a national gay rights organization, and now I feel like I'm responsible for all the gays. For those of you who live and work in nonprofit, you get this. It seems like every decision matters. Certainly that's how it felt to this Irish lesbian that day. The intensity of my work reached a crescendo one afternoon at a board meeting in Chicago. My development director, Julie, she arrives. I take one look at her and I realize she has wires protruding from her blouse. We both notice. And she says, "Don't worry, Joan. It's just a heart monitor. I'm having some heart issues." What do you think happened? You think I sent her home, right? You think she took the next flight back to LA? No. Radio silence. And by the way, board meeting was a great success. And fortunately, Julie did not die. I began to refer to that moment as the time I almost killed my development director. And after that, I became very conscious that my leadership and management style was actually making people sick. Because think about it. When you work to try to save even a small part of the world, it just feels like there's no margin for error. A father and his toddler will sleep on the subway if the legal aid organization doesn't get the check to the landlord on time. And a battered wife, there'll be no escape for her if the women's shelter has no money for marketing because she won't even know it exists. This is big stuff. So let's talk about the intensity of a typical corporate job for a moment. Looks like this: small peaks, valleys, and a few lulls for good measure. But you take a job in the nonprofit space that you feel deeply passionate about, feels like that. Now, I lived in the land of this red line from during my decade as an executive director, with an intensity that my staff referred to using a Starbucks cup metaphor. How's Joan today? Oh, I'd steer clear of her. She's a venti. But after the Julie incident, I paid attention and I learned 3 valuable lessons I want to share with you. Lesson number 1, give your staff permission to juggle poorly. As a nonprofit, there will always be too many balls to juggle. Remember, the goal isn't to work with your team to make sure you drop no balls. The goal is to work with them to make intentional decisions about which ones to drop. And that's about accepting failure and prioritizing. Lesson number 2, be a real human being. After the heart monitor incident, we had a board meeting, and Asen, the director of IT, did what was a pretty dry presentation until this image appeared. Say hello to Peyton, William, and Harry. After everyone stopped laughing, the tone of the meeting changed. We got more focused, we got more done. And after that, I encouraged pets in every board presentation. Lastly, lesson number 3, be a champion of joy and purpose. The Harvard Business Review and the Energy Project, which is a company that works to increase level of engagement in companies, partnered on a study to look at what influences productivity and engagement in the workplace. The single most important influence: purpose. Those who drive meaning and significance from their work are 3 times as likely to be engaged and to stay put in their job. And so to all of us who are touched by the land of nonprofit, remember, we are wearing the ruby slippers because we are all about purpose. And your role as champion of purpose is that much more important. You must create opportunities for your staff to be engaged in the work. Introduce people to those whose lives are touched by it. You would not think twice about inviting a donor to ride a truck to deliver produce to a food shelter. But would it ever cross your mind to invite the receptionist? The person who greets every single person who comes through your office? Think about that. Consider the impact not just on the receptionist, but on everyone who walks through the door. Once upon a time, I may have been a venti who allowed a staff member to come to a board meeting wearing a heart monitor. But I really do hope that what they felt was some of the joy and the privilege that I felt about doing this kind of work. Because it is that privilege and that joy that will enrich you, sustain you, and enable you to do the very best work you can do for the stakeholders and clients who deserve nothing less.